Hey everybody, for this quick presentation, I'm going to walk you through how to write a short science activity for this week's module. And so we are focused on program outcome number 5, using content knowledge to build meaningful curriculum. And this week we are focusing on life science. So again, just like math, remember how you can select your math content area or your math strand? You can select um, life science, you can highlight it or you can type it in up top. Pick your ages. Now, I would say if you did preschool for last week when you did math, do preschool this week, and then next week do toddlers, and the following week do elementary school. I want you to try to do each age group for this course so that you get the experience. I'm going to say I'm going to select kindergarten as my age group. Now, science planning is really different than math planning. The first step typically in science planning, and when you get to lab school or if you've taken 160, this is all refresher. For those of you that have taken lab school, for those of you that have taken 160, which is curriculum development, the first thing that you would do is select a topic. And an appropriate life science topic for kindergartners, you want to think of a few things. You want to think of what is readily available in your environment right now that children can have connection to, exposure to, and that you can bring into the classroom or into the home that they can have experience with outside of the classroom or home. It has to have opportunity for hands-on learning experience and you have to be able to access the real thing. And I'm going to be really choosy and pick pumpkins as my topic. And I'm just going to make that note somewhere for myself. Maybe I'll even put it here. Pumpkins is my topic. And the first thing that I would have done before even getting to this point, so choose your topic and then create a concept web. And my concept web likely has pumpkins at the middle and then branches of what's the anatomy of a pumpkin, how do you use pumpkins, where do pumpkins grow, where can you find pumpkins at the grocery store, at a pumpkin patch, in my yard. When do pumpkins grow? They grow from summer into late fall. So that you have enough information that you can develop a research question. So your research question is the first thing that you want to write for your science activity, or you can have your concept first. But what I want you to know is that your science concept is your answer to your research question. So I'm going to type that here. Answer to, oopsies. I can hear my kids yelling at each other. I'm sorry if you can too. I don't know who they're yelling at. All right. So for my research question, what do I already know about pumpkins that I could teach to young children? What might be a question that they may ask about pumpkins? Let's see. They might say, what does a pumpkin need to grow? I could do that. I could say, what is on the inside of a pumpkin? Let's do that. What is on, what is in the inside of a pumpkin? That is a tangible question, a logical question that a young child might ask that has a concrete answer. Now, when you answer your research question, that is your concept. I don't want you to make this up off the top of your head. I want you to be as accurate, concrete, and challenging and as scientific as possible. So I'm going to do what anybody does. I'm going to do a Google search. Now, I know Google's not always accurate. You can use any search engine. You could use an encyclopedia, but find a way to get the most concrete answer. What is inside a pumpkin? Let's see what it says. So there's pulp and seeds. Let's see what else. What are the parts of a pumpkin? Edible, the flesh, the seeds, and the pulp. I think I'm going to stick with that. inside a pumpkin. So I have to answer my question. Sorry, I got to go back to my inside a pumpkin. You will find pulp, seeds, and the flesh. This is where it gets a little tricky because these are really just vocabulary words, right? Until we actually do something, these are just vocabulary words. Pulp, seeds, flesh. That concept, if you don't do anything else, if you just answer that question, it's just vocabulary. So the next part is the activity objective, and this is what the children will do. So remember, in one of the week 2 videos, we talked about the ABCs of our activity objective. This is the statement that contains an audience, a behavior, and a condition. And so the audience is the children. The children will, and the will part is the start of our behavior. I'm going to use the scientific word, dissect, and I don't think I spelled it right. Oh, it fixed it for me. We'll dissect a pumpkin to identify the pulp, seeds, and flesh. Okay, do we have an audience, a behavior, and a condition? And we have to check for alignment. So alignment means, does everything make sense? Does your research question have an answer? Does your concept answer your research question? And does your activity objective teach to your concept? So let's take a look. The question was, what is on the inside of a pumpkin? And then my answer is, inside a pumpkin you will find pulp, seeds, and the flesh. And then the activity objective should just state exactly what you're going to do to unearth the research question and to unpack that science concept in a hands-on way. And when you're doing this, when you're teaching, you want to make sure that you have the real object there and don't already have it cut open, right? You could just cut the top off and say, let's look inside. But what fun is that? You want to engage a child's full range of senses, from their tactile experience to the smell that they are getting when they cut that pumpkin open, and to the feeling of scooping the guts of the pumpkin out. And so our activity objective, it is accurate, it contains an audience, a behavior, and a condition, and we have also identified a measurable outcome. Identify. So the children will dissect, that's the behavior, right? The condition is really the pumpkin and the seeds and the pulp and the flesh. But now we have a measurable outcome, and that's identify. So the children will dissect a pumpkin to identify the pulp, seeds, and flesh. That's that. Then you're going to list your items. So you'll want real pumpkins. Maybe you want three large pumpkins. Child safe pumpkin knives. I love those, by the way. They work so much better than real knives. Maybe some spoons. You might want to plan for kids with sensory issues and maybe have some gloves. My son is on the autism spectrum. He loves carving pumpkins, but he hates touching the guts. So he wears gloves. And also you might want to know if you have kids who have latex allergies and provide an alternative type of glove. Let's see, trays, maybe trays to dump stuff out on. That might be good. And then for science vocabulary, here we go. We have some great science vocabulary already listed up in our activity objective. Oh golly, what did I do? And in our concept. So we have the words pulp, seeds, and flesh, and dissect and identify. These are all great vocabulary words. And when you do this, I'm not going to do this in mine because I'm running out of time, but you have to define your words. So if you put pulp and nothing else, you're going to lose points. These are the easiest points that you can get just by defining your vocabulary words. I really like the word dissect. That might be a word that's new to some kids, and that literally means to take apart. And maybe identify is good, but maybe we want to stick with some of the language of the pumpkin. And so flesh might be a new, and flesh is can be applied to many different fruits. And so that might be also something that you can talk about, is that a pumpkin is technically a fruit because the seeds are on the inside and they grow from a flower. Then your open-ended questions, you might, golly, I'm just going to ignore that. What could you say to young children to get them engaged? You might say, let's see, you want to expand their thinking about your concept. What do you think is on the inside? Have you dissected a pumpkin before? Tell me how that feels. How does that smell? Uh, you might even just say, have you dissected a pumpkin before? And that's not necessarily a yes or no question, so you have to follow it up. Oh, really? How did it smell? Or, oh, you haven't? What do you think we should do first? Or maybe, let's see, how do you think we should open the pumpkin? Now, some kids are going to already have some experience sawing open a pumpkin, right? You carve around the stem, and because when we're making a jack-o'-lantern, we want to be able to pop the top off and put our candle in. But you don't have to do that this way in this activity. You could cut the pumpkin in half. You could cut the bottom out. There are so many ways that you can cut up a pumpkin. This might be your opportunity to share a few ways. And then the next step is the Piagetian task that is associated with this particular activity. So we have classification, seriation, temporal relations, and spatial relations. I'm going to just be really clear. There are a couple of ways you could go with this. With classification, you are identifying the parts of the pumpkin, the pulp, the seeds, the flesh. With temporal relations, there is a first, next, last order of dissecting a pumpkin. And then spatial relations, the seeds are on the inside. So you could literally pick any one of these, but please explain to me why you selected that particular Piagetian task. So here, don't just type the task. I want you to give me an explanation of why you selected what you did. And then the teaching strategies goal objective, you can go look and see which science objective this meets. Remember, in math, we are focusing on just the math area. In science, you flip down to that science area and determine which objective that is met by this particular activity. And that is how you create a science short science activity. You're going to post this in your Canvas workspace to get peer feedback by Tuesday, and then by Sunday, you will post it to Canvas as an assignment. All right, please do let me know if you have questions. Have a great week.